The coffee mug in my hand, cracked porcelain with the faded Baxter State Park logo, was still warm when I heard my own voice calling from the tree line, asking me to come help with the equipment. I was Iris Drummond, 34, 3 years running wildlife population surveys in Aroostook County, and I'd never left anyone behind on a job until that February. The problem was I stood alone in the clearing. I need to go back 5 days to explain how we ended up there, and further still to explain why the state of Maine has a special phone number that rings exactly twice before someone with no name and a Bangor area code tells you what you will and won't include in your field reports. But the mug matters because I was holding it, feeling the heat through my glove, staring at the dark line of spruce and hemlock when I heard myself, my cadence, my slight lisp on the S, my exact phrasing, call out from the woods. The mug slipped. I caught it, and I made the choice that cost us Yara. 5 days earlier, I'd been in the regional Fish and Wildlife office in Ashland, trying to explain to Brett Hollings why our February lynx survey had pulled 3 sets of canid prints that measured 7 inches across the heel pad. Brett had transferred up from the Massachusetts division 8 months back, still wore his Boston College class ring, still thought his zoology degree from 2019 made him the smartest man in any room. He leaned back in the chair until it creaked. Probably wolf-dog hybrid, he said, scrolling through his phone. Someone's pet got loose. Wolves haven't been in Maine for decades, I said, and the gait's wrong. The stride length is 60 inches. He looked up then, smirking. Bipedal articulation. Iris, come on. Yara Mendez had been standing by the coffee maker silent until then. She was 41, Penobscot on her mother's side, had worked the Northern District for 16 years. She set down her cup, not porcelain, steel thermos, always, and said, Gus Frechette called me last week. Said something took 4 of his traps, not the animals, the traps, 100-pound steel leg holds chained to ground spikes. Brett snorted. Gus is what, 70, 75? He's 72, Yara said, voice flat. And he can navigate 50 square miles of the St. John River watershed in a whiteout. I laid the photos on Brett's desk. The clearest print showed 4 toes, heavy claw marks, and something else. An impression behind the main pad that looked disturbingly like a heel strike. The kind a human foot makes when the weight rolls from ball to heel. We need to extend the survey north, I said, up past the Allagash. Brett stood, pocketed his phone. Write it up as anomalous canid, possibly hybrid. Recommend trail cams for next season. Yara met my eyes, didn't say anything. Didn't need to. We went north anyway. Took my 2019 Dodge Ram because Yara's F-150 had a busted transmission and Brett sure as hell wasn't coming. We left on a Thursday morning, late February, the kind of cold that turns your nose hairs to glass when you breathe. Loaded the truck bed with survey equipment, trail cams, 2 weeks of rations, sleeping bags rated to 20 below. The plan was to run a transect from the Ghost Pond region up through the old timber tracks, set cameras, take samples, document whatever we found. 30:06. I raised an eyebrow when she slid it behind the seat. For moose, she said. Sure, I said. 3 playing some call-in show about ice fishing. The host was taking reports of a banner year for lake trout. Normal, everything normal. We stopped at a gas station in Portage for coffee, and I grabbed a Moxie from the cooler, that weird gentian root soda that tastes like medicine and childhood summers at the same time. Yara bought a paper map, the old-fashioned kind, because cell service died about 40 minutes north and GPS got confused in the heavy canopy. I asked as we pulled back onto the highway. She unfolded the map across her lap, traced a line with her finger. My grandmother used to tell a story about the Kawakwe. Said it was a spirit that wore animal shapes but stood like a man when it wanted to. When I was a kid, I thought it was just a boogeyman thing. Keep children from wandering off. She paused, folded the map along a different crease. You see things, tracks that don't make sense. Deer stripped clean and hung in trees 12 feet up. Could be bears, I offered. Could be, she agreed. 3 times in my career I've found stacks. Cairns, sort of, but deliberate. Arranged in a line pointing away from trails, like markers. Last one was maybe 4 years back, up past Eagle Lake. Perfect pyramid, stones graduated by size. I kicked it over, figured it was some hiker's art project. Next morning, it was rebuilt. Different spot. The highway narrowed to 2 lanes, then to barely 1.5. Patched asphalt giving way to cracked blacktop and then hard-packed dirt. Pine forest pressed close on both sides, dense enough that the daylight went gray and aqueous. I clicked on the headlights. I asked. I did. 2 weeks later, I got a call from someone who didn't give a name. Asked me very politely not to include speculative construction events in official reports. I felt something settle in my stomach, cold and heavy. Someone knows, Yara said. We reached the Ghost Pond access road an hour before sunset. There was a rusted fire gate chained across the entrance, but the chain was looped loose and the padlock was open, hanging like a question mark. Yara got out, swung the gate wide, and we drove through into a corridor of white pine and paper birch that seemed to swallow the sound of the engine. The road climbed for 2 miles, switchbacking up a ridge, before it dead-ended at a clearing where an old fire tower stood skeletal against the sky. 70 feet of rusted steel scaffolding, the observation cabin at the top missing most of its windows. We'd planned to camp here, use the tower for visibility surveys in the morning. We set up the tent as the light bled out of the sky, a 4-season mountaineering tent, double-walled, good to 40 below. Got the camp stove going, boiled water for dehydrated stew that tasted like salt and cardboard. The silence was enormous. No wind, no bird calls, just the ticking of the cooling truck engine and the hiss of the stove. Yara asked. I paused, spoon halfway to my mouth, listened. We ate fast and cold-soaked the dishes with snow. Full dark had come down like a curtain. No moon, the stars hard and bright and distant. I clicked on my headlamp to stow the food bag in the truck. We'd learned long ago not to keep anything scented near the tent, and that's when I saw the first stack. It stood maybe 15 feet from the truck's rear bumper, just at the edge of my light's corona. 7 stones, graduated, stable. I hadn't noticed it when we'd arrived. She came over, saw it, went very still. She walked a slow circle around the stack, scanning with her flashlight. No moss disturbance on the ground. No scrape marks. She crouched, examined the base. Iris, these rocks are from the drainage ditch, 100 yards downslope. I saw them when we drove in. Could be Gus. In the dark? I didn't have an answer for that. We retreated to the tent, zipped the fly, and sat in our sleeping bags with the stove off to conserve fuel. Yara had the Winchester across her lap, not loaded, but the magazine close by. I had my field knife, 5 inches of carbon steel, totally inadequate for anything bigger than cutting cord. The tent fabric popped and settled in the cold. Around midnight I heard the voice. It came from the direction of the fire tower, a man's voice, low and conversational. I couldn't make out the words, but the rhythm was clear. Someone talking, pausing, talking again, like a one-sided phone conversation. Yara heard it too. I could see her silhouette tense, head cocked. The voice continued for maybe 3 minutes, then stopped mid-sentence. Silence rushed back in. We waited. I counted my breaths, got to 200, and then the voice started again. Closer. Same tone, same rhythm, but now I could almost distinguish words. It sounded like directions. Turn left. No, right, watch your step. That's Gus, Yara whispered. That's Gus Frichette's voice. I've known him for 20 years. She didn't answer. The voice moved again, now southeast, near the drainage ditch. Then it stopped. We sat frozen for another hour, but it didn't come back. At first light, we unpacked fast and without discussion. The stone stack had been joined by 2 more, forming a triangle around the tent with us at the center. The stones were still dry, no frost, which meant they'd been placed after the temperature dropped. Recently. We loaded the truck, collapsed the tent, threw everything in the bed. Yara loaded the Winchester, chambered a round, set the safety. We didn't talk about leaving. We both knew we were going deeper. The fire tower, up close, was a ruin. The ladder rungs were intact for the first 40 feet, then missing in a gap-toothed pattern, but someone had climbed it recently. I could see scrape marks in the rust, fresh and bright. Yara stayed at the base, rifle ready, while I went up. My gloves stuck to the frozen metal. At the 3rd platform, I found the first mark, a long, deep gouge in the steel beam, about 7 feet off the platform deck. The metal was scored in 4 parallel lines, each groove a 1/4 inch deep. I ran my fingers along it. No rust in the cuts. Recent. At the top, the observation cabin was a shell. Broken glass, bird shit, rotted maps curling on a particle board desk. And on the west-facing wall, scratched deep into the wood, a symbol I didn't recognize. A circle bisected by a vertical line with 3 horizontal marks crossing it. Below the symbol, written in what looked like charcoal, "Do not call back." I took photos with my phone, even though there was no signal to send them. Climbed back down. Yara saw my face. I showed her the photos. She stared at the symbol for a long time. "That's a warning," she said finally. "Old style. My grandmother drew something like that once, said it meant a threshold." We drove north, following the old timber roads that weren't on any official map. Yara navigated by memory and the paper map, directing me through turns that often looked like nothing more than gaps in the trees. The forest changed as we climbed, less pine, more spruce and tamarack. The understory choked with alder and frozen moss. We saw no animals. No tracks except our own tire ruts. Around noon, we passed an old logging camp, a cluster of collapsed shacks with rusted equipment scattered like bones. I slowed. "Don't stop," Yara said. "We should document. Don't." I kept driving. In the rearview mirror, I saw the shacks recede, and just before they vanished around a bend, I saw movement in one of the empty windows. Tall, dark, gone. An hour later, we found the ice fishing shacks. There were 5 of them on a frozen lake, the kind of pop-up shelters guys use for winter fishing. Aluminum frames, canvas walls, a hole augured through the ice inside. But the lake wasn't marked on any map, and the shacks were arranged in a perfect pentagon, equidistant from each other and from the center of the lake. We parked at the shore. The ice looked thick, 2 feet easy, but I didn't trust it. Yara stepped out, scanned with binoculars. "No trucks," she said. "No snowmobile tracks." We walked out onto the ice, moving carefully despite its obvious thickness. The cold was enormous, a physical pressure. My lungs ached. At the first shack, I pulled back the canvas door and looked inside. Empty. No gear, no chair, no heater. Just the hole in the ice, perfectly round, 3 feet across. The water below was black and still. I shone my light down into it and saw something pale move in the depths, too quick to identify. The second shack was the same. 3rd, 4th, same. At the 5th shack, the one pointing due north, Yara found the bait. It was a backpack. North face, blue and gray, hung from the ceiling frame on a bungee cord. Inside, a satellite phone, 3 energy bars, a folding knife, and a laminated ID card for a wildlife surveyor named Martin Kress. The ID was dated 2021. "I knew Martin," Yara said quietly. "He went missing 3 years ago, March 2021. I turned the backpack over. The fabric was intact, no tears, no blood, but the bottom seam had been opened and carefully restitched with what looked like sinew. This is bait," I said, "for us." We left the backpack, left the shacks, drove away fast. The sun was already dropping toward the horizon. February days are short that far north, and we needed to make camp. But the ice shacks had rattled us. The deliberate arrangement, the impossibility of their placement, the backpack hanging like bait in a trap. Someone or something wanted to be found. Or wanted us to think we were the hunters when really we were the hunted. We found a gravel turnout near a frozen creek bed and decided to risk camping in the truck. We folded the back seats down, layered sleeping bags, kept the Winchester and my knife within reach. Ate cold rations. Didn't risk a fire or the stove. The windows fogged with our breath and then frosted over, turning the world outside into abstraction. Around 8 p.m. the knocking started. Rhythmic, deliberate. 3 slow knocks on the driver's side door, then silence, then 3 knocks on the passenger side. Back and forth. I couldn't see anything through the frosted windows. Yara held the rifle aimed at the passenger door. The knocking continued for 10 minutes, then stopped. Silence. Then my voice outside the truck, muffled by the glass and frost. "Yara, I think I dropped the fuel canister." I was inside the truck. I hadn't spoken. Yara's eyes met mine. She mouthed, "Don't answer." My voice again, a little petulant now. "Come on, it's freezing out here." The voice was perfect. My inflection, my vocabulary, even the slight whine I get when I'm cold and tired. I felt a weird vertigo, like I was somehow outside myself listening in. Yara, slowly, reached forward and scraped a peephole in the frost on the passenger window. Peered out. Her face went slack. I whispered. She didn't answer. Just handed me the rifle and scraped a second peephole. I looked. Standing beside the truck, maybe 8 feet away, was a shape. Bipedal. Taller than a man, maybe 7 feet. Hunched at the shoulders. Covered in dark fur that was shaggy and uneven, like a poorly groomed dog. But the proportions were wrong. Arms too long, legs digitigrade. Bending backward at the knee like a wolf's. And the head. God, the head. Canine but massive, the muzzle too long, the jaw too heavy, and it was looking directly at the window I was peering through. It opened its mouth. "Come on," it said in my voice. Then it smiled. The teeth were yellow-white and too many, row after row, the gums black. It held the smile for 5 seconds, an eternity, then turned and walked into the forest. The gait was smooth, almost gliding, the backward bent legs propelling it in long, loping strides. It vanished into the trees, and the darkness swallowed it. We didn't sleep. We sat with the rifle and the knife and listened to the woods. Around 3 a.m. we heard other voices, a child crying, an old man coughing, a woman singing something tuneless and wrong. The voices circled the truck, never closer than 20 feet, never farther than 50. At dawn, they stopped. We started the engine as soon as there was enough light to drive. The truck turned over rough, the oil cold and sluggish, but it caught and we rolled out of the turnout and back onto the timber road without speaking. I braked. She pointed ahead. The road was blocked by a tree trunk, freshly fallen, the brake pale and clean. But the tree had fallen uphill, against gravity, and been laid precisely across the road at chest height. "We go around," I said. I reversed, found a gap in the trees wide enough for the Dodge, and eased off the road into the forest. The underbrush scraped the paint, and the truck bucked over hidden roots and rocks, but we made it around the tree and back onto the road 100 yards north. When I checked the rear view, I saw the tree trunk tilt, lifted from one end, and then dragged sideways off the road. Something was clearing the path behind us, herding us forward. The road ended at a gate, chain link, 12 feet high, topped with barbed wire. A sign, private property. Timber lease, 447N, no trespassing. But the gate was open, hanging loose on its hinges. Beyond it, the road continued into a valley thick with old-growth spruce. "This is wrong," Yara said. "No, this is too easy." I started to reverse. The engine died, just quit, no sputter, no cough. I turned the key. Nothing. Not even the solenoid click. Yara checked the gauges. She popped the hood, climbed out, and I followed. The engine compartment looked normal, no cut wires, no obvious sabotage. But when Yara touched the battery terminal, she jerked her hand back. "It's hot." I touched it. She was right. The plastic casing was warm, like something had drained it all at once. We stood in the road in the cold, staring at the open gate. "We walk out," I said. "Back the way we came." "In this cold?" It disabled the truck. But even as I said it, I knew we didn't have a choice. The temperature was dropping. We had no way to call for help. And whatever was out there had shown it could mimic voices, move trees, drain batteries. Staying put meant freezing. Walking back meant exposure. The only option that offered any possibility of shelter, of answers, was forward. We loaded our packs. Yara carried the Winchester and I took the survival pack with the stove, fuel, rations, and first aid. We left the tent and the rest of the gear, walked through the gate. The road descended into the valley, winding between trees that grew denser and darker until the daylight was barely a suggestion. A mile in, we found the buildings. It was a compound. 8 structures arranged around a central courtyard. Barracks-style housing, a garage, a storage shed, and a larger building that might have been an office or mess hall. All wood construction, weathered gray, windows empty and dark. No signs, no vehicles, no indication of what this place had been. Yara approached the office building slowly, rifle up. I followed. The door was unlocked, swinging open at a touch. Inside, desks, filing cabinets, a corkboard with faded notices pinned in rows. Everything covered in dust and mouse droppings. Yara checked the files while I scanned the notices. Most were mundane. Shift schedules, equipment maintenance logs, safety reminders. But one sheet, printed on yellowed paper, stood out. Directive 17A, effective March 1986. All personnel. Do not respond to calls for help outside designated safe zones after sunset. Do not investigate vocalizations resembling human speech. Do not attempt to track specimens beyond the blue markers. Lethal force is authorized for any specimen breaching the inner perimeter. Report all sightings to Site Command immediately. Yara found a map in one of the desk drawers. It showed the valley with the compound at the center, and radiating outward in concentric circles were colored lines: yellow, green, blue, red. The blue line was marked Maximum Safe Perimeter. The red line, much farther out, was marked Containment Failure Threshold. We were well past the blue line. This was a research site, Yara said. Federal, probably. She unfolded another document. This one, a typewritten report with half the text redacted in black marker. Specimens demonstrate advanced mimicry capabilities, learning and reproducing human vocalizations after single exposure. Intelligence assessments indicate problem-solving ability equivalent to higher primates. Aggressive responses to perceived threats, but also evidence of strategic behavior. baiting, misdirection, coordinated group tactics. The rest was redacted. They were keeping them here, I said. And then something went wrong. But they're still here, the Kiwakwe. A sound outside. Footsteps in the courtyard. We moved to the window, careful, and looked out. There were 3 of them. They moved like wolves but stood like men, their bodies caught in some nightmare hybrid form. The largest was maybe 8 feet tall at the shoulder, its fur a mottled gray-black, its muzzle long and studded with teeth even at rest. The other 2 were smaller, leaner, circling the courtyard in opposite directions. Their eyes caught the dim light and threw it back yellow-green. They were searching. One stopped at the barracks, nosed the door, moved on. Another examined our footprints in the snow, following them toward the office. It stopped 10 feet from the door, sniffed, raised its head. "Iris," it said in my voice, "I know you're in there. Come out." The voice was perfect. My cadence, my tone, my slight lisp. If I hadn't been standing next to Yara, I would have believed I was outside talking to myself. Yara aimed the Winchester at the door. I pulled my knife, knowing it was useless but needing to hold something. The creature cocked its head, listening. Then it laughed, a sound that started human and slid into a wet, chuffing bark. "Okay," it said. It turned and loped back to the others. They conferred. I swear to God they conferred. The 3 of them stood in a loose triangle, heads together, bodies shifting in a way that looked like communication. Then they dispersed. One to the garage, one to the storage shed, the largest to the barracks. They were systematically searching the compound. "We can't stay here," Yara whispered. The map. There was a notation. Section K, north side. We found the map again, located Section K. It was a small square symbol behind the compound, maybe 200 yards into the trees. No guarantee it still existed. No guarantee it would be safe. But staying in the office meant getting found, and I didn't want to learn what these things did when they caught prey in an enclosed space. We waited until the creatures were on the far side of the courtyard, then slipped out the back door and into the forest. Moved fast, compass heading north-northwest, trying to stay quiet but prioritizing speed. Behind us, I heard a howl, rising, warbling, full of rage and something else. Joy, maybe. The joy of the hunt. We ran. The forest was a maze of deadfalls and low branches. I smashed through without care, tearing my jacket, bloodying my hands. Yara was ahead, moving with the efficiency of someone who'd spent her life in the woods. We covered the 200 yards in maybe 3 minutes and found the bunker. It was set into a hillside, concrete walls half buried, a steel door with a wheel lock like a submarine hatch. The door was sealed. Yara grabbed the wheel, pulled. It didn't budge. I dropped my pack, found the folding shovel and wedged it into the wheel's spokes for leverage. We both pulled. The wheel shrieked, shifted an inch, another pull, another. It turned, grudging, and the locks disengaged with a clang that echoed through the trees. We hauled the door open and scrambled inside, swinging it shut behind us. The wheel on the inside was easier, and we spun it tight. Locked, darkness, total. I fumbled for my headlamp, clicked it on. We were in a concrete corridor, narrow, sloping down. The air smelled of mildew and old earth. Water dripped somewhere deeper in. We descended. The corridor opened into a room lined with bunks, a kitchenette, storage lockers, an emergency shelter, built to house maybe a dozen people for a few weeks. Most of the supplies were ruined. Canned goods bloated with botulism, fabric rotted to rags. But we found bottled water, still sealed, and some vacuum-packed meals that looked intact. We also found the logs. They were in a locker, spiral-bound notebooks with dates ranging from 1984 to 1987. Field observations, incident reports, Personnel notes. I skimmed while Yara checked the rest of the bunker for other exits. There were none. We were in a sealed box. The logs told the story in fragments. May 1984. Initial specimens captured near St. John River. Aggressive, but containable. Subject a demonstrated vocal mimicry after 6 hours observation. Repeated Dr. Hallstrom's instructions back at him verbatim. Unexpected. September 1984. Subjects B and C have learned to operate door latches. Enclosure 2 redesigned with double lock system. Subject A continues to mimic, now reproducing conversations from days prior. March 1985. Incident. Subject D escaped during transfer. Killed 2 handlers before being subdued. Vocal mimicry of handler Pell used to lure handler Suarez into attack range. November 1986. Breeding confirmed. Subjects A and E produced 3 offspring. Growth rate abnormal. Intelligence appears inherited, possibly enhanced. February 1987. Site breach. Multiple specimens escaped inner perimeter. Lockdown initiated. Casualties mounting. Recommend immediate evacuation and air support. The last entry was March 1987, written in a shaky hand. Day 6 of siege. 15 survivors in bunker. No contact with outside. They know we're here. They're testing the door, learning it. Yesterday, one of them spoke in Commander Hallstrom's voice. Hallstrom is dead. I saw him die. And described the bunker layout perfectly. How do they know? We never told them. We never... The entry ended mid-sentence. I looked at Yara. Above us, muffled by the concrete, something heavy dragged across the door. Then silence. Then a voice. Yara's voice coming from outside. Iris, I found another exit. I looked at Yara. She was standing right next to me. Hadn't spoken. Yara's voice. Safer than staying here. They were talking to each other, using our voices, having a conversation we'd never had, trying to trick us into responding, into revealing which voices were real. We stayed silent. The conversation continued for an hour. Our voices, discussing escape routes, debating whether to make a run for it, arguing about the rifle. It was uncanny and horrible. At one point, my voice said something I'd thought but never spoken aloud, a fear about my mother's dementia, a private terror, and I nearly gasped. How did it know? Then I remembered the logs. Intelligence, memory, learning. They'd been watching us for days, listening, learning not just our voices but our fears, our patterns, our relationships. Yara touched my arm, pointed to the bunks. We needed rest. We took shifts, 2 hours each, one sleeping while the other watched the door. The voices outside continued, cycling through variations. Sometimes our voices, sometimes the voices we'd heard in the forest, the child, the old man. Once, Gus Frichette's voice pleading for help. Yara's jaw tightened, but she didn't respond. I slept badly, dreaming of my own voice calling me from the dark. When we were both awake, we rationed the food we'd brought and the intact vacuum packs from the bunker. Made plans. The bunker had no other exit, which meant we'd have to leave the way we came. We had the rifle, maybe 30 rounds total. Against how many creatures? 3 that we'd seen, but the logs suggested a breeding population. Could be a dozen, could be more. We wait them out, I said. They waited out the last group. I didn't have an answer. On the second day in the bunker, the voices stopped. The silence was worse. We stared at the door, waiting, but nothing. No sounds, no movement. Yara cracked the wheel, opened the door an inch, peered out. The corridor was empty. Daylight filtered down from the entrance. Could be a trick, I said. We packed our gear, loaded the rifle, and ascended slowly. At the top, The steel door was still shut, but unlocked from the outside. The wheel turned freely. Someone or something had unlocked it, inviting us out. We opened it together, fast, rifle up. The hillside was empty. Snow had fallen, a light dusting, covering everything in white. No tracks, no shapes in the trees, just the forest, silent and still. We moved toward the compound, scanning constantly. The buildings were as we'd left them. No signs of the creatures. At the office, we found the map again and traced a route back to the truck. Maybe 3 miles overland, less if we cut through the valley. We started walking, made it a 1/4 mile before we found the first body. It was frozen, half buried in snow, but the park ranger uniform was unmistakable. Name tag, M. Kress, Martin. The surveyor who'd vanished in 2021. His body was intact, no obvious trauma, but his face was wrong, eyes wide, mouth open, an expression of terminal horror frozen in place. Yara knelt, examined him. No wounds, no blood. It's like he just, maybe, or fear. We kept moving. Found 2 more bodies over the next mile. Both researchers, based on the clothing. Decades-old remains, mummified by the cold. One clutched a radio, the mic frozen to his hand. The truck was where we'd left it, untouched. I popped the hood. The battery was still warm, drained, but I'd brought jumper cables and a portable jump starter in my pack, basic precautions. I hooked them up, waited, tried the ignition. The engine turned over. Caught. Ran rough for 10 seconds, then smoothed out. "Go," Yara said. I didn't argue. Threw it in gear and reversed hard, swung the wheel, and pointed us back toward the gate. The road was clear. We accelerated, the truck bouncing over ruts and rocks, and I didn't slow down until we were through the gate and a mile beyond. That's when the pursuit started. I saw it in the side mirror first, a shape loping out of the trees running alongside the road, then another on the opposite side, pacing us. They were fast, faster than the truck on the rough road, and they were hurting us again, pushing us forward. "They're pushing us toward something," Yara said. Ahead, the road curved right, hugging the edge of a ravine. I couldn't slow down or they'd catch us. I took the curve at 40, too fast, and the truck slid on the ice and slush. For a sickening second, I thought we'd go over the edge, but the tires caught and we fishtailed back onto the road. One of the creatures broke from the trees and charged. It hit the driver's side, a massive impact that dented the door and spiderwebbed the window. I swerved left and it fell away, tumbling into the ravine. 2 more ahead, standing in the road, shoulder to shoulder, blocking the way. "Hold on," I said, and floored it. They scattered at the last second and I blasted through the gap between them, clipping one with the side mirror. It spun away, the road straightened out, and I pushed the truck as fast as it would go, 60 on a road meant for 30, and the creatures fell behind. We hit the main timber road, then the highway, then pavement, civilization. We didn't stop until we reached Ashland, pulling into the Fish and Wildlife office lot just after dark. My hands were shaking so hard I could barely turn off the engine. Yara sat motionless, staring straight ahead. Brett came out, looking annoyed. "Where the hell have you been?" I climbed out of the truck. The driver's side door was crumpled, the paint scored with deep gouges. 4 parallel lines. "We need to make a report," I said. I told him. The tracks, the ice shacks, the compound, the creatures. Yara corroborated every detail. Brett listened with his arms crossed, expression shifting from annoyance to disbelief to something like pity. "You're telling me you found a secret research facility and got chased by... What? Do you have proof? Photos?" I checked my phone. All the photos I'd taken, the tower symbols, the scratches, the documents, were corrupted. Just gray static. Yara's phone was the same. "The logs," she said. Brett shook his head. "Go home, both of you. Take a week off. I'll file the trip as a standard survey, no findings." We left. Yara dropped me at my apartment in Presque Isle, and I stood in the parking lot watching her drive away, taillights fading into the dark. I went inside, showered for an hour, and tried to sleep. Couldn't. Every sound was a footstep. Every shadow had teeth. The next morning my phone rang. Unknown number. Bangor area code. "Miss Drummond," a man's voice said. Polite, professional. "We'd like to arrange a brief meeting. We know. We'd like to ensure that when you do, it accurately reflects standard survey findings. We'll be in touch with scheduling. In the meantime, we recommend you avoid discussing your trip outside official channels. Speculation can cause unnecessary public concern. Have a good day, Ms." He hung up. An hour later, Yara called. "I got a call. Bangor area code. I don't know." We met that afternoon at a coffee shop in Caribou, sat in a back corner and tried to make sense of it. The evidence pointed to a covert research program, probably federal, studying a species of unknown bipedal predator with advanced cognitive abilities. Something had gone wrong in the 80s and the site was abandoned, but the creatures remained. And some agency, unnamed, unaccountable, was still monitoring the area, suppressing information, making sure nobody looked too close. "We should go public," I said. "With what?" "We go back, get the logs." Yara stared into her coffee. "Yara, I mean it. I've worked these woods for 16 years and I've never felt like prey until now. Those things learned my voice, Iris. They got inside my head." I wanted to argue, but I couldn't. I'd felt it too. The invasion. The way they'd taken something fundamentally ours, our voices, our language, and turned it into a weapon. We parted ways and I drove home in silence. That was 4 months ago. I still work for Fish and Wildlife. Still run surveys, but never north of the Ghost Pond access road. I filed the report as Brett ordered. Standard survey, no anomalous findings. Yara did the same. We don't talk about it. Don't even really talk to each other anymore. But sometimes, late at night, my phone rings, unknown number. I answer and hear nothing, just breathing. And once, just once, I heard my own voice on the other end whispering, "Come back." I hang up, block the number. It calls again from a different number. 3 weeks ago, Gus Frechette was found dead in his cabin near the St. John River. Natural causes, the report said. Heart attack. But his neighbor told the local paper that the night before, he'd heard Gus talking to someone outside his cabin, arguing. When he looked out, Gus was alone, talking to the trees. Yesterday, Brett sent out a memo. New survey assignments for the spring. He's assigned a team to the Northern Wilderness region, Ghost Pond area. 2 junior rangers fresh out of college, eager. I saw the names and felt sick. I wrote them an email, request reassignment. Brett responded within an hour. Danger from what, Iris? Wildlife? I wanted to tell them, wanted to explain, but the words wouldn't come. Who would believe me? And even if they did, what could they do? The things in those woods have been there for decades, maybe longer. They've outlasted researchers, rangers, containment protocols. They're patient, they're smart, and they're still learning. Last night I dreamed I was back at the fire tower, climbing the ladder in the dark, rung by rung, while my own voice called from below, "Iris, come down, it's okay." At the top, the observation cabin was full of them. Dozens, hundreds, all shapes and sizes standing in the dark, watching me with yellow-green eyes. And they spoke in unison, a chorus of voices. Mine, Yara's, Brett's, Gus's, Martin's, everyone who'd ever gone into those woods. Tell them, they said. I woke up gasping, and my phone was ringing, unknown number. I didn't answer. But it's ringing again now as I write this. I know I shouldn't answer. I know it's them, somehow, reaching out through the networks and towers and satellites, finding me. But part of me wants to. Part of me wants to hear what my own voice will say when it's not my own anymore. I think that's how they win. Not by chasing, not by killing, by making you curious enough to go back. I'm not going back, I'm not. But the two junior rangers, their names are Emily Chen and David Morales, they leave tomorrow. And I didn't warn them. I couldn't find the words that wouldn't sound insane. So I'll carry that. Another weight, another voice in my head that isn't mine. The phone is still ringing. I should answer. I won't, I think. God help me. I think I'm going to answer, I answered. Static at first, then my own voice, distant and layered like it was coming from the bottom of a well. You remember the way. I hung up and sat in the dark of my apartment, hands trembling. The phone didn't ring again. It didn't need to. The message was clear. Emily and David were going into the woods tomorrow, and something wanted me to lead them, or follow them, or witness what would happen. I couldn't let them go alone. .357 revolver that I'd inherited and never fired. I drove to the office before dawn and waited in the parking lot. Emily and David arrived at 6:30 in a white Fish and Wildlife Suburban, laughing about something, holding coffee cups from the Dunkin' on Main Street. They looked impossibly young. Emily had her hair in a neat braid. David wore new hiking boots, still unscuffed. I got out of my truck and walked over. Emily saw me first, smiled uncertainly. Miss Drummond, we're just heading out on the Ghost Pond survey, I know. David frowned. Brett doesn't know, and he's not going to. I opened the Suburban's rear door and started loading my gear next to theirs. Wait, we can't just... David started. Yes, you can. You're going into an area I surveyed 4 months ago, and you need to know what you're walking into. So either I come, or I file an emergency report with the state police claiming imminent danger and your trip gets scrubbed. Emily and David exchanged looks. Emily shrugged. Okay. We drove north in silence for the first hour. Then I told them everything. The tracks, the voices, the compound, the creatures, the phone calls. I showed them the photos on my phone, still corrupted, but the metadata was intact, proving I'd been where I said I'd been. I showed them the dent in my truck door. David looked skeptical. Emily looked pale. Emily asked. I did. I was told to file standard findings or face administrative consequences. You're saying there's a government cover-up of... I'm saying there's a suppressed research program involving an unclassified cryptid species with advanced cognitive abilities. We reached the Ghost Pond access road by noon. The gate was still open, the chain still hanging loose. David wanted to proceed on schedule, set cameras, take samples, document findings. Standard survey protocol. No splitting up, I said. No investigating voices, no following sounds. They agreed, though I could see David thought I was paranoid or traumatized or both. We drove to the fire tower clearing. The stone stacks were gone. Just empty ground and pine needles. No evidence they'd ever existed. We unloaded gear and I walked the perimeter while Emily and David set up the first trail camera. The woods were utterly silent. No birds, no wind, just the oppressive quiet I remembered. Emily's voice, tight. She was staring at the fire tower. Someone had climbed it. Recently. Fresh scrapes in the rust, and at the top, visible even from the ground, something was hanging from the observation cabin railing. Something dark and rectangular. Stay here, I said. The hell we will, David replied. We climbed together, the ladder creaking under our weight. At the top, I saw what was hanging. A laminated ID badge on a lanyard. Emily Chen's badge. Her photo, her name, her hire date. 3 weeks ago. But Emily was standing right next to me. She pulled her own badge from her jacket pocket, compared them. Identical. She whispered. "They know you're coming. They've been watching." David grabbed the fake badge, turned it over. On the back, written in black marker, "Welcome back, Iris." We descended fast, reached the ground, and I was already moving toward the Suburban when I heard it. My voice calling from the tree line to the south. "Iris, we found something." David's voice from the west. "No, it's a den. Fresh kills." We stood in the clearing, the three of us silent. None of us had spoken. The voices continued, having a conversation we weren't having, our words and cadences used like puppets. "We're leaving," I said quietly. We piled into the Suburban. David turned the key. The engine clicked once. Dead battery. I swore and grabbed my jumper pack, but when I popped the hood, I saw the battery cables had been disconnected. Not cut, disconnected. Carefully. Recently. "They were here while we were up the tower," Emily said. "Run," I said. We grabbed essentials. My revolver, the air horn, flashlights, 1 pack of supplies, and ran south back toward the Maine Timber Road. It was 3 miles on foot. We could make it before dark if we moved fast. We made it half a mile before they showed themselves. 3 of them, stepping out of the trees ahead of us, blocking the path. The same ones I'd seen at the compound. The huge, gray-black alpha and 2 smaller hunters. Behind us, I heard branches crack. More coming. I pulled the revolver, aimed at the alpha. It cocked its head, almost curious. "Maybe not," I said. I fired. The shot was deafening in the quiet forest, and the bullet took the alpha in the shoulder. It staggered, snarled, a sound like rending metal, and dropped to 3 legs. The wound bled dark, almost black, but it didn't retreat, just stared at me with those yellow-green eyes. "Run," I told Emily and David, and fired twice more at the other 2 creatures. Missed once, clipped one's flank. They scattered into the trees and we bolted east, off the path into dense forest. We ran for maybe 20 minutes, crashing through underbrush, vaulting deadfalls. Behind us, I could hear them pacing us, keeping distance but never losing our trail. They were herding us again. I tried to change direction, head south, but every time we did, one would appear ahead, cutting us off, forcing us back on their preferred route. We broke into a clearing, and I realized where we were: the frozen lake. The 5 ice shacks still stood in their perfect pentagon, dark shapes against the white ice. "The ice!" David gasped. "If we cross, no, they want us on the ice." But they were closing in from 3 sides, driving us toward the lake. I saw movement in the trees, 4, 5, maybe more. We were surrounded. "The shacks," Emily said. "Shelter. It was a terrible idea, but we were out of options." We ran onto the ice, heading for the nearest shack. I expected the ice to crack, to give way, but it held firm. We reached the shack and ducked inside. It was exactly as I remembered. Empty, except for the hole in the ice, 3 feet wide, water black below. But now I noticed something I'd missed before. The canvas walls had been reinforced from the outside with fresh rope, and there were scratches in the ice around the hole. Deep gouges. 4 parallel lines. "We're in a cage," I said. David looked out the door flap. "They're just standing there." I peered out. He was right. 6 creatures arranged in a loose circle around the shack, maybe 30 feet away, waiting. Emily whispered. That's when I understood. They're not trying to kill us. They're trying to study us. See what we do, how we problem solve. David pulled out his phone. No signal, but I can record. They'll just corrupt it like they did ours, I said. But he was already filming through a gap in the canvas, narrating in a shaky whisper. I looked down at the hole in the ice. The water was still, but as I watched, something pale moved in the depths. Rising. A shape. Humanoid but wrong. Skin white and slick. It broke the surface without a sound, and I saw its face. Eyeless, mouth full of the needle teeth, gills fluttering at its neck. "There's something in the water," I said. Emily looked, went rigid. Another species or another stage. The thing in the water opened its mouth and spoke in a child's voice. "Help me. I'm cold." It reached up with long, webbed fingers, grasping at the ice edge. I grabbed Emily and David pulled them back. "Don't touch it." Outside, the creatures began to vocalize. Not words, but sounds. Howls and barks and something that might have been laughter. Coordinating. I still had 4 rounds in the revolver, 4 rounds against 6 creatures plus whatever was in the water. The math was bad. "The flares," Emily said suddenly. "In your pack." I checked. 3 road flares, the kind that burn at 2,000 degrees. "Fire," David said. "Through what? Ice? Canvas? There's nothing to—" I stopped, looked at the hole. "The water thing?" Emily asked. "The shacks are on 2 feet of ice, but the holes go through. If we can break the ice between here and shore, create a channel, the creatures won't cross." It was a desperate plan, probably wouldn't work, but it was something. I lit a flare, the red flame sputtering to life, and thrust it at the water creature. It shrieked, a sound like tearing cloth, and submerged fast. I dropped the flare into the hole. It sank, glowing red, and I could see the water thing flee deeper. "Now we make noise." David triggered the air horn, a blaring, apocalyptic sound. The creatures outside, startled, began to close the circle. Closer. 20 feet, 15. I lit the second flare and threw it at the nearest creature. It struck its flank and stuck in the fur, burning. The creature howled and rolled, trying to extinguish it, crashing into another. Chaos. We bolted from the shack, sprinting toward shore. The ice groaned under our feet but held. Behind us, the creatures recovered and gave chase. I could hear their claws scrabbling on ice, gaining. We hit the shore and scrambled up the embankment. I turned, lit the last flare, and threw it onto the ice between us and the creatures. It landed and skidded, trailing sparks. 3 of the creatures charged anyway. The alpha in front, wounded shoulder forgotten. It hit the section of ice where the flare burned and the ice gave way, not from the heat, but from the cracks already spreading from the augured holes. The alpha plunged through with a roar, thrashing in the black water. The 2 behind it tried to stop, skidded and went in too. The remaining 3 on the far side pulled up short, pacing, snarling, but unwilling to cross the broken ice. We ran. Followed the lake shore, found a trail, ran until my lungs burned and my legs went numb. When we finally stopped, gasping, it was nearly dark and we were somewhere I didn't recognize. David checked his phone. "I got signal. Call 911, I said. "Tell them we're lost hikers. Give them the coordinates." He made the call. The dispatcher said rescue was at least 3 hours out. We found a sheltered spot under a rock overhang and huddled together for warmth, taking turns keeping watch. They found us just after midnight. A state police search and rescue team with ATVs and thermal imaging. We were hypothermic but alive. They wrapped us in blankets and drove us out to a checkpoint where an ambulance waited. At the hospital in Fort Kent, they treated us for exposure and dehydration. A detective came to take our statements. We stuck to the story. We got lost, equipment failed, we panicked and ran. No mention of creatures or voices or compounds. The detective seemed satisfied, But at 3 a.m., a man in a plain suit came into my room. No hospital badge, no police ID. He sat down in the visitor's chair and folded his hands. "Miss Drummond," I said nothing. "I'm pleased you're safe. I'm less pleased that you returned to a restricted area after being advised against it. It's not restricted." He pulled out a tablet, tapped it, and showed me a satellite image of the Ghost Pond region. Large sections were marked in red. This area has been under federal wildlife observation since 1987. Access is limited to authorized research personnel. Civilians are discouraged through passive measures. He didn't blink. The species in question is under long-term study. They pose minimal risk when left undisturbed. Defensive? They killed people. The logs said, "The logs you reference are classified." He leaned forward. "Here's what's going to happen. Your report will state you got disoriented and lost. David Morales' phone footage, which he wisely uploaded to cloud storage, will be corrupted due to technical failure. Emily Chen will be reassigned to a southern district, and you will accept a promotion to a desk position in Augusta, effective immediately. No more field work. Then your employment with Fish and Wildlife will be terminated for cause reckless endangerment of personnel. You'll lose your pension, your credentials, and you'll spend the rest of your career explaining why no state or federal agency will hire you. Your choice, miss." I looked at him for a long time, saw no malice in his face, just bureaucratic efficiency. This was his job, managing the unmanageable, burying the unbearable. I asked quietly. For the first time, something like sympathy crossed his face. "We don't know. Not really. The research is ongoing, has been for 40 years. He stood. "Get some rest." He left. I sat in the hospital bed, listening to the beep of monitors, and felt the weight of it settle on me. The knowledge I'd carry, the silence I'd keep. Emily and David were released the next day. We met in the hospital parking lot, awkward and uncertain. Emily spoke first. "I'm being transferred to Baxter State Park." David nodded. "I'm going back to grad school." We all knew what that meant. They'd been warned off, same as me, threatened or bought or convinced that forgetting was safer than remembering. "I'm sorry," I said. "You saved our lives," Emily said, "whatever those things were." We exchanged numbers we'd never call and said goodbyes we didn't mean. I drove back to Presque Isle alone, the morning sun pale and cold on the windshield. The promotion came through a week later. Desk job in Augusta. Data analysis and policy review. No more field surveys, no more woods. I sold my truck, couldn't stand to see those gouges every day, and bought a sensible sedan. Moved to a small apartment near the Capitol building. Started my new job filing reports and attending meetings and pretending the wildest place I knew was the coffee shop on the corner. But sometimes, late at night, my phone rings. Unknown number. And sometimes I answer even though I know I shouldn't, and I hear the voices. My voice, Yara's, Emily's, David's. All of us talking in the dark, having conversations we never had. And once, just once, I heard something new. A child's voice, young and clear. "Mommy says there are more of us now. She says we're learning." I hung up, blocked the number. Filed it away with all the other things I can't talk about. Last week I saw a news brief. 2 hikers missing in the Allagash region. Search called off after 10 days. Presumed dead. The names meant nothing to me, but I wondered if they'd heard voices. If they'd been curious. If they'd answered. This morning I got an email. No sender name. Subject line, "Thank you for your service." Inside was a single attachment, a photo. The fire tower at Ghost Pond, taken from above, drone footage probably. And standing on the observation deck, arranged in a perfect line, were 7 figures. Tall, furred, bipedal. They were looking up at the camera, looking up and waving. I deleted the email, cleared my trash, ran a disk scrub, but I can still see them when I close my eyes. Still hear my own voice calling from the trees, asking me to come back, promising it's safe now, promising they just want to talk. I'm never going back. I've got a good job, a quiet life. I sleep with the lights on, and I don't answer unknown numbers anymore, and I'm never, ever going back. But every year, the restricted zone gets a little smaller on the maps. The red boundaries contract. More trails open. More surveys get scheduled. And every year, more people go missing in the northern woods. And I sit at my desk in Augusta, filing reports that say natural causes, animal predation, exposure. And I keep the secret because that's the deal I made. That's the price of survival. I just hope it's enough. I hope they stay in the woods. I hope they don't learn to live anywhere else. But that child's voice on the phone, Mommy, says soon we won't need the woods anymore. It plays in my head on loop. And I wonder how long we have. How long before curious isn't enough? Before the woods come looking for us?